So now we should be moving on to square number 2, I believe. Remember, each one of these squares are going to be a little bit different. So with this one, what we're going to be doing is that we're going to go up into our adjustment layers. Remember that our adjustment layers are pretty amazing. You can do a lot of stuff in our adjustment layers. For this one, we're going to go to hue and saturation. So hue and saturation, essentially hue is your color. Okay, so if I shift that hue, right, you can see a hue is a color. So as I shift it, it's going to change the color of the image, right? So for this one, I'm going to switch it to, I'm going to make olive like kind of a purplish. And you notice too is that I'm on, right now it's showing yellow here, but olive turns purple. And so what we do is actually what's actually happening is that it is the complementary of that color. So if I go to yellow, she's going to be more of a purple. If I go to purple, she's going to turn more yellower. Okay, and so I'm going to kind of make her purple-ish. Saturation is the intensity of that color. So if I go to the left, it's going to turn into a black and white. If I go to the right, it's going to turn her really intensely, colorful. So that's going to be kind of what I'm going to go for on this one. If I go too far, the eyes are actually kind of interesting, but the jacket and that kind of stuff is a little too much for my taste. So we're gonna go try to find happy like medium there. Okay, and then lightness, it's almost like mixing in if you mixed black with it or if you mixed white with it. So I actually could go and do this, but what I don't like right now on this is that it's also kind of changing the color back here. So what I can do is I can link it just to that picture of olive. So by doing that, I can go to this square, which is right here. See, it's right there. And right now it's there's an arrow going through, or there's like a slash going through the arrow. If I click on that, now it's only affecting that layer below it. It's not affecting everything else. Okay, so as I make those adjustments, you can see it's only going to affect her. So I'm going to kind of make it like an intense type layer there. Okay, let's see. So I'm going to go back to adjustments, and I can check out. Let's see what some of my other ones are. So let's do exposure. So essentially, what exposure is that if I go to my right, it's like exposing a photo, right? So if I go to my right, it's going to make it brighter. If I go to my left, it's going to make it darker, right? Offset, it kind of helps balance some of that stuff out. And then gamma correction is kind of like that intensity stuff again. So with this one, I'm actually going to go see. And it's up to you. You can make your own choices with some of this stuff too, obviously. So I'm going to make it a little bit brighter to kind of intensify that stuff. I'm going to bring my offset back. So I want it a little bit darker, but not crazy. So I'm pretty happy with that. One of the things that's actually kind of neat too is that let's say that we really like the jacket being more of that like that color green or like that muted bit a little bit rather than this kind of really intense stuff. What I can do, right, because these are just masks, and so what I can actually do once again is go to my paintbrush and I can take my black paint, make sure I'm on my mask, and I can essentially just go over the top of that, right? And what's going to happen, it's going to make it so it's not affecting that layer, right? So you can see over here. Or let's say we want to do the opposite of that. So let's say Command, let's inverse our mask. So Command I, right? So now you see my mask is black. What I can do is I can switch now let's say if I only wanted my eyes to be that intense, or I wanted just her little handkerchief, her little bib, or her jacket to be that intense, I could go that way too. This is actually how I do a lot of like higher level photo editing, is by doing a lot of like this exposure, or not exposure, but this type of like inverse masking. Okay, so now I'm pretty happy with this. Might actually bring my exposure a little bit brighter. Go back to my adjustments, click on there, bring my exposure a little bit brighter. Oh, so I have to inverse that. Sorry about that. Actually, because I already had it. Let's bring it back to kind of how it was. So I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, now we're gonna make a background. So on the other one, we actually just kind of filled and used a fill for that whole thing. This time we're gonna do something a little bit different. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to a different set of tools. So these tools here, so my pen tool, my text tool, my arrows, and this shape tool, these are all actually vector tools, so similar to Photoshop. So what that means is that no matter how much I zoom in or zoom out, those shapes are still always going to be consistently clean edges. I'm going to bring this underneath, okay? And so when we look at this, you can see my fill right now is white and I don't have a stroke, which is fine. So I'm going to actually change my fill to a yellowish. That's really intense. So let's go back to that kind of muted yellowish. Yeah, I'm fine with that. And then if we look at this again, let's check out our custom shape tools. So remember, depending on what my tools are or which ones I'm selecting, up here, this is my kind of preferences and changes and that kind of stuff. So what I can actually do, so what I can do is scroll through here and find a shape or find some type of pattern or that kind of stuff to actually put in the background. So I'm going to select this just for now. You notice my fill is still yellow. So if I just do that yellow over the top, I'm going to get, nothing's going to happen, right? So I'm going to change that color. So let's try, to an orange. Sorry about that. Let's start my shape first. So I'm going to do, maybe use this. If I hold on Shift, I'll keep those proper proportions the whole time. Let's change this color to like that orange. And you got to remember, right? Just like an Illustrator, so that works. There you go. I'm going to go back and actually change the background of this yellow one. So let's click on that. I liked it the other way, this lighter yellow. We do a light. Ugh. Let's stick with that. That's fine, right? So you're still making a background, you're still filling stuff in, but instead of just doing the fill, I'm actually making shapes. There's a lot of really neat stuff that we can do with it. We can use our Pathfinder stuff just like we did in Illustrator. When we make shapes, we can add to things, we can new layer, combine shapes, subtract, any of that kind of stuff. So we could actually just take two sections, two different shapes. So if I select both of them, it will let me, do a bunch of that kind of stuff too. Or as I add shapes, like I said, the options are kind of endless, similar to, Illustrator. So for box number 2, that is what we're doing. We're messing around again with our adjustment layers. We are using shapes. We're doing hue and saturation, exposure, that kind of stuff. So, so use those same ones. And mess around, pick some different shapes, that kind of stuff, and there you go. That's box number 2. Next we'll try out box number 3.